Our world has been around for millions of years, and during this time, numerous events have significantly shaped the planet as we know it today. These events can be categorized into three groups: good, bad, and terrible. Throughout history, some of these events have been altered to better fit the spirit of their time. Nonetheless, history is something that remains unchanged. In this video, we'll try to discuss the most alarming and authentic historical facts discovered in recent years. While not all of them may have been important, they still have the potential to cause concern among many of us. If you ask someone to list the worst people in our history, they will undoubtedly include Genghis Khan. There's no doubt that everyone knows the name of this man who formed the Mongol Empire. The greatest military leader, became famous for his feats in the 12th century and managed to unite several groups of Mongolian tribes, turning them into the largest state in human history. Genghis Khan was a brutal dictator, ruling lands from the Pacific Ocean to the Baltic Sea. At its peak, the Mongolian Empire was merciless towards other peoples. Invading foreign lands, they looted and killed local residents, capturing new territories. Over its existence, the empire covered 22% of the Earth's surface, resulting in the deaths of over 40 million people. Surprisingly, the Mongols invaded so much land that it affected the climate. During the period of active military campaigns aimed at capturing territories, the Mongols killed so many people that they left scorched earth behind. As the land became depopulated, it cleared up, allowing trees to grow again, forming entire forests. According to scientists, the actions of the Mongolian Empire led to the elimination of 700 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere. Genghis Khan is the only historical figure who influenced the climate, but he had to take the lives of millions of people to do so. Are such sacrifices worth preventing global warming? Regardless of nationality, culture, and musical preferences, each of us has heard of Mozart. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart remains one of the greatest and most talented composers in human history. Despite living only 35 years, the Austrian virtuoso was a maestro in every sense of the word. Mozart began composing music in his childhood, and his phenomenal musical ear, memory, and improvisation skills made him the youngest member of the Bologna Philharmonic Academy at 14. Centuries have passed since Mozart's death, but his works still enjoy popularity and maintain a good reputation. Many might think that an opera person is a role model, always well-dressed, well-behaved, and a listener of classical music. But this was not the case with Mozart, as his personality was controversial throughout his musical career. The composer wrote several songs dedicated to vulgar subjects. For example, in 1782, he wrote a 6-voice canon with a rather indecent title. When the publisher received the piece, he was not just shocked, but decided to change the lyrics, making them more amicable to people. Another of Mozart's songs is dedicated to the act of going to the toilet without getting out of bed. Some of his works were written for friends, while others openly provoked those who were to read the text. Surprisingly, a person with refined musical taste could write such things, but the fact remains a fact. Adolf Hitler was a terrible and possibly the worst person in human history. The Nazi dictator led a harsh campaign against Jews, culminating in World War II. 6 years of heavy battles destroyed countries, devastated economies, and claimed millions of lives. Enough time has passed since the death of the Nazi Germany leader, but only now have facts been discovered that cast Adolf Hitler in a new light. It has become known that the Nazi dictator loved Disney movies. He banned American films due to artificially created anti-Americanism, but considered Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs the greatest animated film. During Roy Disney's visit to Germany in 1938, one of the founders of Walt Disney Company, he sold Snow White to the Nazi propaganda ministry. Reportedly, no Germans saw it as the copy was immediately delivered to the Führer and shown in his private cinema. When Adolf Hitler was a student, he was fond of creating paintings and drew Disney characters. Even as the dictator of Nazi Germany, he did not abandon his hobby and continued drawing. Every day after dinner, he watched cartoons, but this did not make him a kinder person. Not long ago, the director of a Norwegian university discovered Adolf Hitler's drawings dated 1940. Characters from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Bashful and Doc with the Führer's signature, and an unfinished sketch of Pinocchio confirm his love for Disney. Analysis of the paint and handwriting confirmed that it was not a forgery, but believing that a leader whose actions led to the start of World War II drew pictures and commanded an army almost simultaneously is extremely difficult. In September 1941, during the height of World War II, Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, was the second largest city in the USSR. As soon as the Nazi army invaded the Soviet Union, Leningrad became one of their key targets. The troops were determined and planned to occupy the city, but they couldn't do so during the military campaign. By organizing the siege of Leningrad, they cut off its supplies, with the only communication channel between the city and the outside world being a water route across Lake Ladoga. The city was blockaded by German and Finnish troops for a total of 872 days. During this period, the residents of Leningrad experienced one of the worst famines in human history. In just over 2 years, the city's population decreased by a third to less than 800,000 people. With the onset of winter, the city lacked food, wood, coal, and gas. People survived in severe frost without food and lit fires by sacrificing their belongings. With each passing day, the situation worsened, and people increasingly did not return home. Initially, this was attributed to their attempts to escape the besieged city, but soon the amount of meat on the market began to increase. The sudden increase in supply didn't alarm anyone, as it was reported to be horse and dog meat, but it is now evident that the residents of besieged Leningrad had to resort to cannibalism, literally consuming each other. Officially, more than 2,000 cases of cannibalism were registered during this period, but in reality, there were significantly more. The Egyptian Empire was one of the largest in human history. Pharaohs had unlimited power and influence, leading some of their actions to verge on insanity. Pepi II began his reign at the age of 6, taking the place of his older brother Merenra. Scholars believe he ruled for just over 30 years, but was a passive leader, having little impact on the Egyptian Empire. However, he made history due to his strange hatred of flies and beetles. Pepi II genuinely despised insects, which can be attributed to his young age. When he came to power, the pharaoh was a child, but his actions were astonishing and repulsive. To distract insects from himself, Pepi II kept naked slaves nearby, covered head to toe in honey. Victims of his fears were covered in scars, ulcers, and boils, and some suffered from diseases such as cholera and malaria. Today, an incubator is an integral part of any hospital. These devices help save the lives of prematurely born babies, giving them a chance for the future. Incubators appeared thanks to the strange and somewhat controversial efforts of one man. Martin Couney was an American doctor who worked and studied under Dr. Pierre Constant Boudin, considered the founder of modern neonatal medicine. Martin developed the first concept of an incubator in 1897 and presented it to the world. Doctors did not appreciate the invention and refused to use it. Among the reasons for their hesitation were the high mortality rate of premature babies and the high cost of creating an incubator, which was about $75,000 at the time. Martin used the incubator to save his own daughter and was confident that his technology would eventually be approved and recognized worldwide. Knowing that onlookers like to watch something strange, he organized several exhibitions at Coney Island, where he showed premature babies living in incubators. People generously paid to see this, allowing Martin to collect the money needed to continue working with the developed mechanism. It is believed that during his career, the doctor saved between 6,500 to 7,000 children. Over time, it was proven that Martin had no education, and no educational institution could confirm his words. Some accused him of inhumanity towards the infants he used, like animals in a zoo, while others honored him as a savior. Martin observed the working principle of the apparatus at an agricultural exhibition, where an incubator for chicken eggs was demonstrated. Considering that the same could be done with humans, he assembled a box of plexiglass and attached an oxygen tube to it. By regulating temperature, humidity, and oxygen level, he achieved remarkable results and gave premature babies a chance for life and a happy future. Religion is one of the most complex and fascinating things in the modern world. This wasn't always the case. As in the past, the Pope went so far in his religious beliefs that it nearly led to a pandemic. In 1227, Gregory IX became the head of the Catholic Church, believing that cats harbored a demonic essence. He distrusted the sweet and harmless animals to the extent that he decided to exterminate them. With his immense influence over the public, Gregory IX convinced people of the necessity of this step. When the plague began to rage during the reign of the Pope, he became even more convinced of the correctness of his actions. Gregory IX assumed that all this was the work of the devil, angered at him for organizing a crusade against cats. Confident in the righteousness of his actions, the Pope doubled his efforts to eliminate cats and the public's reliance on domestic animals. Black cats, in particular, incurred his wrath, as it was believed that they embodied the spirit of the devil. Scientists at the time discovered that the plague was caused by fleas living in the fur of rats and mice. Cats kept the rodent population in check, but the actions of the Pope led to fleas multiplying freely and the plague becoming increasingly dangerous. If you have dental problems today, they can be easily resolved. In the absence of natural teeth, dental prostheses, available in any medical clinic, can be used. However, not many know about the nightmarish history of dentures, and believe me, it is quite horrific. Today, various materials such as porcelain or composite resin can be used for making dentures. In the 1800s and early 1900s, these materials and technologies were unknown, but people still lost their teeth, often due to sugar consumption, dangerous teeth whitening methods, and a lack of oral hygiene knowledge. In those times, people lost their teeth more frequently, and each time they did, they had to find a solution to this problem. For the wealthy and influential people of that era, the solution was simple: take the teeth from the deceased, who no longer needed them. This practice soon got its own name, Waterloo teeth. Doctors removed teeth from fallen soldiers on battlefields, after which the wealthy acquired them. They also got teeth from poor people willing to extract them in exchange for a small monetary reward. Other materials used for dentures included ivory, wood, and animal teeth. Clearly, none of these options seem acceptable now, but they are part of our history. World War II was the most horrific and significant event in human history, not only because of the conflict, but also because of its aftermath. As is known, the course of the war changed after the U.S. Army used atomic bombings on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Despite the catastrophic consequences, the local residents quickly cleared everything left by the bombs, but encountered a terrifying sight. This refers to the black shadows of people and some objects obliterated in the explosion, including children and their bicycles, couples and their cars. This phenomenon soon received its own name, Shadows of the Dead. They serve as a vivid reminder of what the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki did. Scientists believe that the shadows of Hiroshima are an effect resulting from the light radiation during the nuclear explosion. The phenomenon is similar to the appearance of a normal shadow. An object obstructed the surface behind it from the radiation. In an atomic explosion, the radiation is so intense that many surfaces change color and properties. Unprotected people in the radius of the light radiation received burns up to charring, leaving unburned shadows. Some of them survived but died after some time from the injuries and burns. Nearly 80 years have passed since the explosion, but some shadows still exist, reminding us of the horrific consequences wrought by the war. Thomas Edison, an American inventor and entrepreneur, gained widespread recognition for his contributions. Over his career, he obtained 1,093 patents in the USA and more than 3,000 in other countries. Edison is credited with creating the phonograph, a device for recording and playing back sound. He also improved the telephone and telegraph, developed one of the first commercially successful incandescent lamps, and suggested using the word hello at the beginning of a conversation. Edison created many useful things, but like any other inventor, he experienced several commercial failures. The most notable of these was the sale of eerie phonographic dolls. In 1877, Thomas developed an original doll, a 22-inch girl with a miniature removable phonograph playing a children's song. In 1890, Edison's company developed the doll and launched mass production. The toy was revolutionary, with relatively small dimensions and a phonograph that allowed listening to poems. To activate the mechanism, a child simply had to turn a handle on the doll's back, and it would start singing. Such a revolutionary creation seemed destined for high sales, but the reality was different. Experiments and development took several years, but sales lasted only 6 weeks. Edison's phonographic doll was a commercial failure because not everyone liked turning the handle to activate the singing. Additionally, the ring-shaped wax records quickly wore out, cracked, and deformed. Another deterrent was the doll's voice, which frightened children and seemed more suited to modern horror movies. Nowadays, heading to a library or a bookstore, it's unlikely to find a book with a natural leather binding. Even if one is found, it's usually just a type of synthetic material. However, books bound in genuine leather do exist. And in the times when this was the norm, natural leather was indeed used. Moreover, this leather was not just real, but horrifyingly natural. At some point in our history, human skin was used for shoes and books, a gruesome truth that few might want to discuss. Anthropodermic bibliopagy is a bookbinding technique that utilized human skin. This practice is not used today, but in the 17th to 19th centuries, it was quite popular and was intricately connected with the practice of tanning skin after the dissection of a donor's body. The production of leather for book covers was similar to more modern methods of processing, with the only difference being the use of human flesh instead of animal skin. Natural leather bindings were made using the skin of executed criminals and convicts, relying on the notion that they would no longer need it. Some books with such unique bindings are still in circulation, which is undeniably eerie. It's frightening to imagine people's reactions if they knew that their bodies and skin would be used for binding books. As is well known, the flag of the United States of America is the most popular flag in the world. At the same time, not everyone is aware of the amazing history of its creation. The Star-Spangled Banner was designed by American designer Robert Heft. He was born in 1942 in Saginaw, Michigan, but spent his childhood in Lancaster, Ohio, where he was raised by his grandparents due to his parents' divorce when he was in elementary school. An American history teacher, Stanley Pratt, gave the class an assignment to create a project that would demonstrate their love and respect for history. 17-year-old Robert decided to redesign the American flag, but received a D for the project. Arguing with the teacher, the student agreed that he would get a higher grade if his flag was adopted by the U.S. Congress. At the time, America consisted of 48 states, but Robert was confident that Alaska and Hawaii would eventually join them, so he created a flag with 50 stars. This was one of the reasons the teacher gave him a poor grade, thinking the student had made a mistake. Soon, Robert presented his flag design to President Dwight Eisenhower. Surprisingly, the schoolboy's project was approved and chosen from over 1,500 designs. By Independence Day 1960, the flag was officially adopted as the national flag. Later, Robert returned to Lancaster High School, where the teacher kept his promise and raised the grade for the project. Some try to dispute this story and believe it to be a mere myth, but proving otherwise is unlikely. Upon entering any old church, one can notice the stained glass windows adorning its walls. The bright and colorful stained glass captivates, as it features not just interesting designs but also artworks, like Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper and other historical events from the Bible. Have you ever wondered how exactly this glass was made? Most of these images were created using stained glass, a special texture of glass that first appeared in the 6th century. In 1112, a German monk detailed the process of creating bright and beautiful glass in his diary. Its production begins with adding materials like potassium carbonate and sand, processed at high temperatures. Stabilization of the product occurs through the addition of metal oxides, which can color the glass. After the glass takes shape, it is hand-painted. The paint includes copper and lead, mixed with a small amount of urine, which is used as a diluent for metal oxides and improves their fusion with the glass during firing, ensuring the perfect result of diligent work. Many people are wary of nannies and caregivers, as they work for money with children they have never seen before. After the story of Minnie Dean, your view of them may become even more skeptical. Wilhelmina Dean is the only woman in New Zealand's history to have been executed. Other women were found guilty of crimes and sentenced to death, but their sentences were eventually commuted. In the mid-19th century, many people were involved in childcare, and Minnie Dean was no exception. In 1872, she married the owner of a small hotel, and facing financial difficulties, the family moved to Winton. While Charles Dean raised pigs, his wife became a nanny, taking in unwanted children for a small fee. At that time, childbirth out of wedlock was considered shameful, so baby farms were created, providing the woman with a steady stream of clients. At different times, Minnie Dean cared for between 3 and 9 children. In the 19th century, child mortality was a natural occurrence, so no one was surprised that several children died under Minnie's care. After an investigation, the police concluded that there was nothing criminal about the deaths, but people thought otherwise and accused the nanny of crimes against the deceased children. In 1889, a 6-month-old baby under Minnie's care died. Soon after, another child passed away. and the authorities were forced to investigate and inquire about the conditions in which the children were kept. Crimes committed by women were not uncommon and often became sensational, but it was impossible to accuse Minnie as the police could not find evidence of her involvement. In 1895, the police temporarily detained Minnie to search her house. In the garden, they made a horrifying discovery: 3 children's bodies. One child had been poisoned with medication, and another had been strangled. As reported, many were not afraid of this, and, when giving their children to Minnie Dean, insured their lives for a substantial sum. The investigation proved that she not only exhibited a tendency for violence, but also drugged the children with prohibited substances. Her lawyer tried to prove her innocence and convinced the court that she simply hid the bodies, fearing discussion and distrust. Despite this, the court found her guilty, and on August 12th, she was executed by hanging. Today, Minnie continues to serve as a character in New Zealand folklore. Some legends claim that no flowers will ever grow on her grave. I don't know if this is true, but Minnie Dean's name has forever entered history as one of the most horrific and shameful. We all know and appreciate Jameson whiskey for its rich taste, but the story of one of the founding family's members will horrify you. James Sligo Jameson, the great-grandson of the great John Jameson, who founded the whiskey company in 1780. He was an heir to the fortune, and like many wealthy people, was an adventurer. James had enough money to embark on an expedition, accompanied by famous explorers. In 1888, he joined an expedition to Central Africa. While in Congo, he committed a truly horrific act. Details of this event vary slightly depending on the source. Jameson, his wife, and a translator described them differently, but all testified that James commanded the expedition's rear column in a region known for cannibalism. Reportedly, the man wanted to personally witness cannibalism among the locals and paid 6 handkerchiefs for a 10-year-old slave girl. Subsequently, she was tied to a tree and given as food to the cannibals living in that region. James not only observed but also used watercolors to make sketches depicting this action. Jameson died in August, and a few years later, he was accused of an act that the whiskey company tried to carefully hide. Jameson's wife and journalists published a letter in which the man reported slander. He did not do the aforementioned things, but merely became an accidental witness to the cannibals' brutality, losing a bet to an Arab who claimed that people in Congo lacked humanity. At the same time, other alleged participants in the crime confessed to what happened, proving Jameson's guilt and his fetish for cannibalism. And that's all for now. If you liked this video, don't forget to rate it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell. Your activity is the best reward for me. Thank you for your attention. See you soon. Goodbye.